All right, so I am now recording. So welcome. I kind of wanted to start today since this is week one, and some people are happy to be back. Some people are a little bit nervous. We just kind of have this big, broad range of things that we feel with getting back to college, getting back to life, and I'm just kind of curious. And if anybody's willing to share, that would be great. I'm curious as to how COVID has affected you, has impacted you, and try and think of it in two terms, in a positive way and in a negative way. Like what negative things have you experienced, if you're okay sharing it, and maybe what's one positive that's come from this whole experience. Does anybody care to talk about that?
I got one.
All right, go ahead, Logan, right?
Yeah. So one negative way for sure is like of course we're not on campus right now, so we don't get the experience of in-person class, which is unfortunate. But and another negative way is definitely the football season being canceled. Um, that sucked. But one positive way for sure though is it gives us time to buckle down in a controlled environment with our classes.
Uh-huh.
Mature a little bit more before we get up to school.
Okay. That really good points there. And by the way, love the lighting there in your room.
Oh,
That's
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
Um, yeah, that's very very true. I'm a huge sports fan, football fan. I went to just about every one of the games last season for the Warriors, and it's a real big bummer. Now I did hear something. Some of the schools are doing their football season a little bit later. I haven't heard anything about ESU. Are we doing that?
Yeah, that's what we're pushing for. Hopefully,
Okay.
that'll happen.
Okay, because that's my big negative is sports have been totally upset. That's not my big negative, of course. So much has been affected, but that's certainly one of my bigger ones. Any hockey fans, by the way, raise show of hands. Phillies or Flyers? I mean, no Flyers. Oh man, they squeaked one out last night. I love hockey. Of course, I'm a Penguins fan. I don't have any. Uh, I did wear my jersey last night just because it's playoffs, but yeah, Penguins didn't uh, hold up too well. It was almost a shutout. So anyway, thank you, Logan, for sharing that. And absolutely, there's this maturity factor that we are all going through because it's unlike anything we've ever experienced before. How about anybody else? Anybody else care to
Um,
share?
I don't mind sharing. Um,
Okay.
one definite negative factor is that this year it's like I feel like summer was canceled. I feel like we didn't really have like a whole summer. Like usually when people think of summer, it's like they think about going away on vacation and being with friends and just like being around each other, having like parties. And I feel like because of COVID, it just completely just shut down like all plans. Not only that, but it's like also it's hard to deal with because like the sickness is going around and people are catching it, and it's just like it's hard for people not to be like together. Like if people are like very close, it's hard for them not to like be in the same room without having be so far apart from each other. But one definite like positive factor is that we're home and we're safe and everything. It's so much safer to be here than to be up on campus and around each other, because otherwise everybody else could catch it and then everything will have to shut back down.
Yeah, and that's something our sister school Bloomsburg found pretty quickly, and it was kind of amazing to me that some of the schools that did open up thought the teenagers in high school, they're going to be respectful and they're going to wear masks and they're going to social distance, and I'm kind of putting myself back when I was in high school, just thinking, you want me to do what with a mask? Probably not. I'm not going to sit 6 feet from my friends at lunch, so that a lot of the expectations that some of the administration had was unrealistic. And I'm very, as sad as it is to see things shut down at ESU. I think it just made sense because Bloomsburg, I think I forget what they had. It was a pretty large number, and they had to shut down, or they're talking about shutting down, I think, very soon just because of it. But yeah, some
It,
interesting stuff.
it's sad, but it's a necessary evil to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, absolutely. But all right. Well, thank you. Is it Alina?
Elena.
Elena. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Jump in.
I think like a major negative of everything that's going on, aside from what they were saying about sports and how everybody's home and didn't get a summer and stuff, a lot of people and a lot of families, they lost jobs and things like that due to COVID staffing. I actually lost my job, but
Hmm.
luckily, I ended up finding another one that I was able to work at. But a lot of people, like their whole lives are affected by this. You know, some people
Okay.
got a check or two now, I forget, but a lot of people like monetarily, it's just
Yeah.
their lives in that sense. And also, you know, people have lost other people, you know,
Mm.
uh, in their life. And like, I know I lost an aunt to it, and a
Oh.
lot of people lost siblings and relatives and family members like that. But a good positive to all of it is, you know, you're being close to the family that you have, family and friends that you have.
Mhm.
You're being able to focus on your school, like they were saying, like very intensely, which is nice in a controlled environment rather than being in a dorm or living in a house or an apartment off campus and then spending a lot of your time partying and stuff like that. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. Really good point. And Jacob, I'm sorry for your loss. My condolences. But thank you for sharing that. So yeah, it's. And what did you do for work, if you don't mind me asking?
I was a cashier at a supermarket at a grocery store,
Okay.
and they let me off because I was part time and I told them I was going to go to full time.
Hmm.
And then before I could do that, they said, due to COVID and all that, we're cutting like our workforce in half, and you're one of the ones we're cutting. And I said, oh, okay. I mean, at that point, there was really nothing I could do about it. But then
Yeah.
I got a job at Sheets, like a gas station
Hmm.
convenience store and stuff. So I got a job there, and I'm actually making more there than I was in my old job,
Oh. Okay.
which is good, you know. So I've aside from about this past week, I was working just full time, 5 days a week there, sometimes 6 or 7 days a week, depending on overtime and what they needed.
Hmm.
Because every business has been hit like tremendously with all of this.
Oh. Yeah.
Um, my store actually had a coworker catch the coronavirus, and she took out 18 of our other staff and my coworkers because she
Mm.
like, overlapped shifts with all of them. So for 2.5 weeks, like basically the whole store was shut down except for like because at Sheets you can get food, and then we make food and stuff. So that was all shut down, and you could only buy like drinks in the cooler and stuff at the cash register or whatever. So for 2.5 weeks, it was basically shut down completely.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So yeah, some major happenings. And yeah, thank you again, Jacob, for sharing that. But regardless, and I know there are a lot of people that had different views as to, and I hear it all the time, that it's propagated by media, that this is not a real thing. But we do know that this is a real thing, that it's affecting us, whether we believe it's real or not, right? It's happening. Our society is responding to what's going on. And you're all a direct result of that. We are here today in untraditional means to still try and go forward. Now, the reason I brought that up, and thank you everybody for sharing. I know I saw a couple other people that wanted to share. Um, and I wish we could get around to everybody today. But the reason why I wanted to bring that up, because this is psychology. And as a therapist working in the field, I deal with this all day long. And I talk to people that have lost their jobs, and I talk to people that have lost their homes or are in danger of losing their homes, and helping them process this. And it's very frightening. It's a very frightening world to be in right now for many of us, and psychology plays a big role in that, because we need to know how our brains work, and we're a very solution focused species, right? We got to have answers, and we're going to talk a lot about that as we move into some of these topics and some of these subjects going through the semester is just resiliency and motivation and perseverance and dealing with anxiety that comes up from fear and loss and grief. So a lot of this stuff just unpacks naturally with what we're dealing with today. And I just kind of wanted to highlight that. Okay. So on that topic, what is psychology? Who has, I mean, I know a lot of you have read the book. I can I can see who's registered for Revel and who's spending time in there. But I'm just curious as to who wants to take a stab at psychology, what the meaning is, what the definition is. And I'm going to share my screen just so I can kind of make notes as we go along here.
Can I take it, guys?
Yeah, go ahead, Fahim.
I was the guess. I always say psychology is like the study of like the human mind and its behaviors, basically.
Okay. So psychology. Make sure I don't embarrass myself and not spell it correctly. So one more time. Say that again, Fahim.
I would say the study of the human mind and the behaviors.
Okay. Study of human mind and behaviors. Oh, mind and behaviors. Okay. Anybody else have a definition they'd like to share? Whether it's out of the book or something that you think psychology is. Anybody care to share their thoughts?
Besides like actually never mind.
Are you sure? All right. Well, we got a lot of people in this class, so at least one more. Anybody want to share their thoughts on what psychology is?
Psychology is like, it's the study of like, I guess like how the human mind processes like behavior and like maybe ideas.
Okay. Okay. Processing. Okay. Of the human mind and behaviors. I think I'm gonna kind of just give you a word here. Thoughts.
Yeah, thoughts.
Okay. And what else? What else do we process, do you think? Could be anybody. Anybody?
Our emotions.
Emotions. Man, you read my mind because I was just thinking emotions. I wanted to write emotions. I want to see if anybody would come up with it. So who was that? Okay, your name doesn't pop up, but thank you for sharing that. Okay, absolutely. So, you know, psychology is just all encompassing of, you know, you're right. It's the study, technically, it's a study of the mind, psych, mindology, study of. So absolutely, that's the book definition is study of the mind and behaviors and thoughts, how we process thoughts and emotions. Now in your book, in chapter 1, it goes through a lot of founders that went through and came up with theories about how the mind works, right? And some of it seems a little foreign to us because we're all in the current age and we're pretty well read and we've been around for a while and we know a little bit more about what science tells us, right? But back in the day, they looked at psychology a little bit differently at the turn of the century, 18th and 19th century, where they looked at it as like an ailment of the spirit. So they really locked people away. They forgot about them, and they lived in really poor conditions up until, you know, more recent times where they found that this was inhumane, that we do have cures and we do have medicines that are helpful in getting people through whatever it is they're going through. So yeah, psychology, it just really has evolved by leaps and bounds, probably in the last 50 years or so. So anyway, I heard the word I did not hear in there anywhere was brain. What is the difference, do you think, between the brain and the mind? What is the brain versus what is the mind?
I think the brain is like what basically like stores all of our information, where the mind is what makes it help us process our information.
Okay, so the storage, back to the word of processing. Okay, good. Any other descriptions of brain versus mind?
The brain is like the physical organ, kind of where all the thinking and stuff like that takes place for bodily function. Like it receives all the signals and stuff, but the mind is kind of like, again, to use a word where things get processed, like feelings and emotions and things like that. It's kind of different. It doesn't get all those signals. Well, it gets the signals, but it's kind of like the response to the signals.
Okay.
Those in the mind.
Okay. Response. Good word. Okay. All right. And I think we really covered that well. So when we move forward in this class, I want you to really kind of put yourself in splitting these two concepts up, because the brain is very different from what we think of the mind. So as we talked about, the brain is the physical organ. And when we get into next chapter, we'll talk about how neurons are formed and how neural impulses occur. And it just all really happens within the mind and within our central nervous system, within the brain. And I'm sorry, I mix up the two terms, within the brain and within the central nervous system. So a show of hands, anybody pretty savvy with computers? Like, you know how they operate, you know what some of the components are. Anybody know a little bit about computers and how they work with memory? And so I'm going to liken this, and weirdly enough, I have a bachelor's degree in computer systems technology. So, and then of course I shifted to psychology later in my undergraduate. But what was really the turning point for me with psychology is how similar our minds are with the theories the theories of our mind with how we have created computers. Because we really did. We built computers in the image of what we think our minds and bodies work like. So if you want to use this as an analogy, our brain is the physical circuit boards for a computer. Okay, so you have your hard drives, you have your central processing unit, you have your RAM memory. And as we go through this, I'm going to kind of talk about how this analogy fits in with this stuff as well. You have your monitor, you have your input, you have your mouse, right? And then you have the mind. The mind is more like our software. It runs in the background. It switches, it's constantly switching and giving you different output based on the input. So there's really no physical attributes to software whatsoever. It's just all digital data flow that you input something and it spits out something. And that's kind of what our mind is. The word processing came out. The word response came up. These are all things that we can use with computer processing as well. So some really cool stuff there. Now, psychology, and you'll hear me refer to this a lot throughout the semester, is we look at psychology more as a soft science. Now, what do I mean by that? Soft science versus a hard science. Who has an example of what a hard science would be? What's a hard science? Does anybody know?
Is physics a hard science?
I would consider physics a hard science, yeah.
Chemistry.
What is it? Chemistry? Yes, chemistry. Uh-huh.
Biology.
Biology, absolutely. Those are three really good examples of hard sciences. And so hard sciences are ones that operate in proofs and can prove theories. And there's ample evidence that shows that 1 + 1 = 2 every time. Psychology, we don't really consider as a hard science because why? We're all different. We all have different cultural backgrounds. We all have different family values. We all have different genetic makeups. We may have physical abnormalities that occur that might change our behaviors. So while we can almost predict what somebody's going to do in a given situation, it's not 100%. 1 + 1 sometimes equals 3. And that's just what happened. So in that respect, we are somewhat subjective. We try to be objective in psychology, but the truth is there is some variance in how we behave in different situations. We operate in norms. So while we can see, if we went out, and when we talk about doing, we'll talk more about this on Friday, about doing data collection and doing research. We look at what the masses do. We make a prediction, and then based on available information, and then based on that, we develop a theory, and we test that theory to see if it works. Okay, but again, it's not foolproof. It's not going to happen exactly like we predict it every single time. But we're going to take that majority of the people that do, and we're going to say this is normal. This is what a majority of the people are doing. Okay, and again, we'll talk more about that Friday when we talk about research methods and ways of doing research. So to that end, psychology, we try and do our best to describe it. And when we get into social psychology, all gloves are off, aren't they? Anybody that's taken social psychology or heard of social psychology, we're very good at predicting what people are going to do given certain situations. However, you put them in a group of people, and we have no idea sometimes. and you'll see what I mean when we talk about that. All right. So what I would like to do, okay, we have a lot of people here. I would like to break us off quickly into groups. And what I'd like you to talk about in your groups is, what are some myths that you've heard about psychology? And it could be good, it could be bad, whatever it is. So I'm going to split you off into groups of about four or five people. And just let me know when we come back. I'll give you just a couple minutes to discuss what you think some of those myths are, and have somebody prepared to talk about them. Okay. So let me, 4 people per room. Okay. All right. So go ahead. I'm going to create these rooms. Just go ahead and accept the invitation. And I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll all meet back here. Okay. So just a list, and have somebody that's willing to talk about what some of those myths are. Hey, and Bree, you don't have to go into a room if you don't want to. Just give it a minute for everybody to come back.
Again, it's really just challenging.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. So what did we come up with? What were some myths or facts or something that you've heard about psychology that we can possibly dispel or confirm today?
My group discussed that they usually think the class is easy, but it's harder than expected. And another myth is that everyone thought mental illness was fake, or they didn't take it as serious as they should have until, like, I would say a few years ago, maybe a decade ago. Everybody started taking it a little more serious. And
Okay. And I'm sorry, I missed that first part. You said what something's more harder than what you thought?
some people think the class is harder than expected. Like, usually people say it's easy, but it's a lot that goes into it. That's a lot that goes into the study of, like, the human mind.
Oh, okay. So if I please, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting this. So the thought was that mental health, I'm sorry, not mental health, but psychology is just kind of an easy concept. It's not much science that goes into it.
Right. But it's actually harder than expected because it's a lot of sciences that actually go into it, like the chemistries of your mind has to talk to the rest of the body and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, that's right. And, and trying to track human behavior is very difficult, right? I'm going to write that down actually. Psychology, psych is easy. I don't think anybody's ever told me that before, but that's a first for me. So psychology is easy. When we look at the physical structure of the brain, and again, we'll talk more about this over the next couple chapters because we really deal with the biological perspective of, a lot goes into neurology, and a lot of things can go wrong with the brain that affect people very, very differently. And on top of that, you have behaviors and norms, social norms that go into that mix. And when you get that, it's amazing that we can predict what we can with so little information that's available, right?
Right.
Mental health. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's like, it could be like a physical disconnect or it could be like a chemical imbalance. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. Mental health is fake. And there's, and this goes back to what I was talking about with psychology being a soft science. There are different avenues for therapeutic models. And I can tell you that not one of them alone is most effective for everything. So for example, I operate a lot in the realm of what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's really a connection between the mind and our actions and our behaviors, and being able to reward our minds or punish our minds so that we're either increasing behaviors that are good for us or decreasing behaviors that are bad for us. And when we go into learning, I'll explain a little bit more about that. So there also, we have psychotherapy that's available. We have rational emotive behavioral therapy. We have dialectical behavioral therapy. We have CBT, which I talked to you already about. There are many different models that go out there that go out to help people with certain afflictions. And what we're finding, and again, kind of fast forwarding to the end of this course, is a multimodal approach, is using a combined mix of these therapies. So while somebody might specialize in CBT, which is great for adolescent or child behaviors, later on, CBT might not be effective for certain things like bipolar or borderline personality disorders. CBT isn't always alone the most efficacious method of therapy there. All right, so very good. So mental health is fake. We kind of use that as a defense because we just don't know, right? Okay, what are some other myths the groups came up with here?
I said that people with psychological disorders are more, cause more violence to others.
Okay, so mental health disorders, diagnosis, DX, more violent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Has anybody else heard that? I'm going to expand on that and say dangerous. Right?
I've heard about that. Like, they're more prone to explode or lash out under intense situations or pressure or stress.
Okay. That is also a common misconception, and one that we really that plagued our history with dealing with mental health disorders. Because what did we do in the past with people that were diagnosed with anger issues or overly happy even, or overly sad? What did we do with them? We locked them away. We put them away because we didn't understand it. We didn't know how to deal with it. It was different. Key word there is different than the norm. So when we see things that are different, we tend to be more fearful of that. So of course, the word violent and dangerous comes up when we think of mental health disorders. It's very much the opposite of that. People with mental health disorders or diagnoses are no more dangerous than somebody that's not diagnosed with anything. And having anger, and when we get to emotions, I'll talk more about this as well. Anger in and of itself is not a problem. Everybody gets anger. It's one of our five, depending on what model you look at, one of our five basic emotions that we have. What's dangerous about anger is how we respond to that. And that has nothing to do with mental health disorders. It has to do with how we're used to dealing with anger. And it's very trainable. It's something that we can treat relatively easier than many other disorders. So yeah, that's a good one. Mental health, we can probably say that one is more of a myth. Okay. All right. Next, who wants to take another one?
I said that with the human mind, people say that whenever they remember something, it's almost like seeing like a video recording, like, or maybe like watching like the scene of like a movie.
Okay. Okay. Memory is like video. Very good one. And I love this one because I am very much into forensics. I like one of my research interests is forensic psychology. And this was also a very common fallacy and one that has gotten us as a society into a lot of trouble with false eyewitness testimony. We used to think that way. We used to think that people's memories were like videos and that what somebody saw had to have been the truth. After the advent of DNA, it really came to light that how false our memories really can be and how faulty they can be. That's not saying what you see isn't the truth. What you're seeing is the truth to you. And we think in terms of not pictures and images, but symbols and emotions. And many of you can probably relate to this. How many of you have had like a really terrifying experience or maybe even a really happy experience and you remember vividly? You remember the smells, you remember what's going on around you, the people that were there, the things that the clothes that they were dressed in. We remember things much more vividly when emotion is assigned to that, okay? Because that gets our attention. And next week when we go into the brain, there's a biological explanation for that. So memory is like a video. A lot of people believe that. And what happened is many innocent people have been convicted based on eyewitness testimony that they later exonerated with DNA testing. So that would be a fallacy to think that memory is like a video, because we used to do that. And now we're finding that it caused a lot of harm to innocent people. All right, that's a good one. How about let's do one more.
I heard that like we only use like 10% of our brain.
I love that one. Okay.
That's 10%. A myth, right?
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think that's a myth?
I mean, it sounds like one, but like, I don't know.
Okay. 10% of our brain. I love this one because what they're trying to convey is that we have more potential than what we know. And that's kind of one of those etherical talk yourself up. And there is some truth to that. We are all much more capable of doing more. And that really comes down to motivation and what is important to us and if we want to achieve those goals or not. But the 10% of the brain, I think, where this came from, because this is scientific fact, is we were born estimated with about 200 billion neurons in our brain. And we'll talk more about neurons next week when we get into the biological perspectives. But with those 200 billion neurons, those are the building blocks that start forming immediately, actually shortly after conception in the prenatal phase. Our minds start building neuronal pathways. So ways for us to learn, ways for us to perceive, ways for us to feel things within our body. These neurons, these highways are built from these building blocks we call neurons. So what happens over time is if we don't use these neurons and they don't go towards building pathways, we lose them. They fall out. And they either float around or they're pruned and they're excreted from our body and we don't use them. But it's estimated from the time that we're born with 200 billion neurons to the time that we are later on in our years and die, we only have about 20 billion neurons at that point. So I think that's where that 10% came. Somebody heard, oh, well, if we didn't use 200 billion and we die with 200 million, then or 20 billion, then it must mean we only use 10% of our brain. So I think that that's where that came from. But you'll learn that we use all of our brain almost all the time, even while we're sleeping. At no point is any part of our brain not functioning and not working unless there's some kind of damage to it. Okay, so that's a really good one. Okay, so the purpose of this exercise was, first of all, to kind of get you working in groups and thinking about psychology and what we're going to be covering and unpacking over the next semester or so. I know a lot of you have questions about, this is week one, and naturally this is the case, about how, what's due and when. Bree, have you been tracking the questions on here?
Yes, I have. I've been answering them.
Okay, what are some of the questions?
They were just asking about Revel, but the remind questions I've been getting are a lot of students confused about due dates, with one assignment being due Wednesday and then the response to your peers by Saturday.
Okay, so I'll explain that. This is for week one only. What I would like to do for week one is just get everybody on the same page with doing the assignments, because I know if I scheduled this for Saturday, our first assignment for Saturday, we would have had about 100 people in this class panicking, or 92, how many ever we have in this class, panicking on Saturday, which is not a good place for us to be. So I'm kind of giving you a little bit of panic now so we can spend the rest of the week trying to correct it and get you used to that. So what we're doing, and pay attention for the assignment today, is we are going to be, and let me bring up my window so everybody can see what I'm talking about. That is the incorrect. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. There we go. All right. So under content by today, all I'm asking you to do is a week one assessments. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Cancel. Week one, a 1 to 2 page, it could be 2 pages. I'm not going to be a stickler on pages, as long as you get at least one in here. Read this study. I've attached the article down here so you will be able to view it, and go through these questions and just answer them in sentence format or paragraph format, however you want to do it, just not one word, simple format. Okay. It double spaced APA, so it's double spaced. So that's not going to be a whole lot of that, cuts your writing in half if you're used to doing single spaced. If you try and do a reference at the end of it, APA style, I'm not expecting perfection here. Do your best, try and follow the guidelines. I gave you a lot of resources here in course content. Okay, so this will give you what you need to do to get started with APA. All right. Once you have completed your assignment, click on assignment 1. Now this week is set up as a thread, and I can see a lot of you have done this already, so kudos. Once you get into this thread, every other week is going to be a Dropbox. So all you're going to see is submit, and it'll give you a window to upload your assignment. Okay. This week I did it as a thread, so that way we could see what everybody else is doing. Now you won't be able to see what everybody's doing until you submit something yourself. So be aware of that, but just enter your name or whatever you want in the subject here. I'm not going to be picky about what you enter. I don't think you have to enter any text. But if you do, just write something in there quick. But the important part here is adding an attachment. So you click on that, it'll give you a window to open something up, and you can drop it in there or select a file or do whatever you need to do to get that submitted. And then you hit post, and it's away. Okay, you'll receive a little confirmation, and then you'll be able to go in and review somebody else's by Saturday. Okay, and just look at it and just provide some feedback, either that's I got the same thing out of it or something, just so I know that you've looked at somebody else's stuff. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So I just transferred to this course yesterday. First off, so I didn't really like know too much about like what was going on. So I did try my best with it, I did my research. So I was wondering about like the APA format because I was really confused. It was saying on like certain like websites because I was trying to help get some guides to see like how to do it. It was saying that we need like a title page. Usually for the title page, sometimes for student papers it would say you would have to put your name on it and like the university you were at, but it was certain pages saying that you have to put the author's name. Like so.
Yeah.
Could I put my name or do we have to use the author's name?
You could put the most correct way is use your name. I'm not going to be too picky on a title page. In fact, I announced on Monday that I'm not going to require a title page for the assignments. I will require one for the group project, the final group project at the end. So, but we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah,
okay.
Because it made my thing about like 3 pages because I did a full page of like writing. And then I had a title page and then I had a reference page. So that would be 3 pages that you wanted to. So would that be okay?
Yeah, that'd be fine if you want to do that. Okay. All right. Bree, do we have any other questions that I can respond to?
Yes. Someone asked what's the code for Packback, and I assumed that you had to be already registered to be added. So would they have to email help?
So what you would need to do is go to our homepage on our D2L, and within those instructions, I have an email link. It's help@packback.co, not .com. Email them and let them know that you're in Dr. McMunn's course at ESU and PSY100, and they'll get you set up with your account. Okay. Any other questions, Bree?
No, we're good.
I have another question. I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep asking all these questions.
That's okay.
So on this, so I think on there it said that you need to have like Microsoft Word. Like I don't have Microsoft Word on my computer, so is it okay if I download it from like Google Docs as like a doc?
As long as it uploads, I think that's fine. I'm equipped to handle Google Docs. I know not many people are, but yeah, do your best to try and download it. I believe, maybe I'm wrong. Can anybody verify? Does ESU offer Microsoft Office?
Yeah, they do.
You just have to download it.
It's part of your student email.
Okay.
If you sign up for it with your student email, you should get at least, I think it's a year's worth for free.
Okay, and it's at Office 365, I believe, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so Elena, if you want, go ahead and submit that question D2L, and whoever has that like a link or instructions to how to do that, if that would be great to help her. If you can just put that in general discussion question, okay?
Yes, please and thank you.
Yep. All right. All right. So I know our time is up. Anybody else have a question
I have
for
a
me?
quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For this week's assignment, what kind of question do we have to submit on Packback?
Any question dealing with psychology? Actually, no, I'm sorry. This is week 1. All you have to do is respond to my question. If you want to post your own question, you're more than welcome to get practice. Next week, we'll be doing our own questions, okay? But this week, all I'm requiring everybody to do is just respond to mine. What does psychology mean to you? Okay?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to remind you guys that when you're emailing me, make sure that you have a subject line and you're telling me who you are instead of just like putting a question out there. And for example, someone emailed me to my personal email. I don't know where you found that at, but I have no idea who you are. And can you please just resend it to my school email?
Okay. Good point. All right, so I'm going to hang back for just a couple minutes. That's all I have for you today. A reminder, we will not be meeting Monday as it's Labor Day. So yay, hopefully you'll get out and be able to do stuff, but we will be meeting Friday at our regular time. So have a great rest of your day. I'll hang back if anybody has anything that they need one-on-one support about. All right?
I got a question.
Oh, go ahead, bro.
All right, just give everybody just 1 second here to hop off here.